Hey, it's Saturday. It must be my good friend Duey and Mark, the elders.
Yeah.
Uh,
Good morning,
with young.
sir.
Good morning. Since we last talked, the Lord decided to dump 4.5 foot of snow on you.
That'd be true. It's been a beautiful, sometimes difficult, and awesome experience. It's
Uh,
been,
you tap into your your primal humanness when confronted with massive weather, don't you?
that is true. And and not only that, and I hope we get to talk about this a little bit throughout our show this morning. Um, Not only the primal humanness and the primal sort of the uncivilized weather, but at the same time, and at the same time, not but, and at the same time, we have three horses up the hill that
Mm,
we needed to protect
mm,
and we needed to care
mm,
for.
mm.
And because we ask them, and more than ask, they don't really have a choice of being here. And it's our job to go out and trudge up 4 feet of snow. It usually takes about a minute and a half to get to the barn. It was
Yeah,
20 to 25 minutes.
no kidding.
And
Well, I've added that to our list.
yeah,
Um,
please do, because
I
a
I
lot of
think
what's been going on is people have not been being protected the way they need to be.
so to get right to the nub of it. So this week, Traver did a quite a heartfelt post, about 14 minutes, the Not All Men post. And I watched it
It
again last
was
night.
mind
And
blowing. I've watched it 2 or 3 times. So
yeah, one of the things, I'm a producer. I can't not be a producer. Uh, it's a character flaw. Um, for those of you that are doing direct to camera conversations, he was direct to soul that time,
that
not
would be
direct to camera. But you get that by looking right at the camera and being super comfortable with that. I don't know how many of you, I mean, go look at it again and see what I mean. He didn't have notes. He spoke directly from the heart. He absolutely reached in. That's that's a powerful way to communicate, and it's difficult to do when you're talking to a screen, but it is a skill you can master. And I think as we're trying to build relationships virtually, we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, being good at doing that, that was a masterclass.
that was a master class. I agree.
In his talk, I was listening and pulling out in improv. He calls it the pull. He says, listen to the scene, figure out what you want to pull from that, and start a new scene. And so that's what we do. So we have two people talking. That's a duopoly, or duologue rather. There's a duologue, and then you're listening for what's really going on in that conversation between those two. What are they really talking about? And then you got to it. And for me, it was the root of the issue. And so with that, what I'm going to do is I really liked the just you and I talking and not me worrying about drawing. I do that enough during the week. I'd really just rather talk. When I say the root of the issue, what do you think of first?
What in general, or with Traver's talk? Because
I think in general, one of the things that got me about this show is that we have the opportunity to not get trapped in the news or in current events. Or I want, I would love our conversations to survive temporal things,
got it.
and to be a result of us having walked the earth for as decades as we have. But I think that it's fair to let a current event or a thought or some the zeitgeist, we can't be tone deaf, um, drive a conversation, but I think we have an opportunity to, here we go, both dig deeper and go higher.
Right. The root of the issue, which for me transcends both his post and what's going on right now, is what I was saying about the horses, is that we as men, one of our roles is to protect. This has got a, one of our primary roles is to fucking protect.
Yeah.
And when we not only don't protect, but we become the perpetrators, we that is not right. That is, and especially when we pretend that we're the protectors by being the leaders through religion, through head of the family, all of those kinds of things. And then we perpetrate that it just rips my guts out. It rips my guts out. And that's what happened this past week with the shootings. That's what I mean, my life, you said you cannot not be a producer. I cannot not be a therapist.
Yeah.
And even my partner Kimberly is in Florida visiting her mom and her mother's husband, and there was this whole incident where they weren't being protected the way they should have been. And and Traver said it many times, but the statement of, when I'm in the room, you're safer. That's what we should be doing, and that is not happening. Whether it be with nature, when I'm in nature should be safer. I should be making nature safer. When I'm with my horses or even wild animals, they should be safer. When I'm in the room with anybody, I want whomever is in there to know that they're safer because I'm there. And I'm not saying that from a patriarchal place. I'm saying
Correct.
that from a place of it's more of a primal place.
It's an energetic thing, isn't it, that you project,
Exactly.
right? And we've if you feel safe and you understand safety at the root of the issue is about safety. If you're not safe and you're like this, you know that your unsafe state is going to affect everyone around you.
You bet.
If you're safe and you're secure, and it's funny, I the word certainty came to me just then, but that's different, but it's still a sense of safety. And what was interesting about what Traver said, because he was in the safety business, his his radar must have been lit all the time. It's like a Green Beret, a dear Green Beret friend of mine. His radar's always lit. He can't turn that off, just like we can't turn our things off. He can't turn that off. And I think that Traver is very aware of the safety of the environment and the safety of everyone in it, and understands the protector class at a genetic level. And I think what's great about leaders is when leaders explain that concept to us. I think that the idea of the protector class really resonated with me, which is why I wrote it down again. It's if you self-identify in that, that's the the shift we in the nation make, and then that works out to the people that are around us. There's a phase shift in them, and that's a responsibility. And the other thing I wanted to talk about today was a concept. Another friend that I talk with on Saturdays, he calls it responsibility distancing. Like put
Yeah.
that responsibility of that thing over there. But let's stay with the root of the issue, because I think we're so surface level these days. We barely scratch. I'm thinking this is like we swipe up, swipe up, swipe, swipe, swipe. We don't dig deep at all, and so we never even get at the root of the issue.
Well, and the as you're talking, part of what strikes me is the process of us being domesticated.
Hmm.
And when we began domesticating agriculture about 12,000 years ago, so we began domesticating wheat, for instance. To domesticate wheat, we have to domesticate ourselves. And part of being domesticated is assuming that someone else will protect us,
Oh,
assuming that we don't have to have that in our bones and in our soul.
interesting.
And like with wheat, for instance, we fence it in. Then there's a tree next to it that there's too much shade, we cut that tree down. So that wheat does not have to intermingle with other plants to grow, with the environment, and that wheat does not have to be natural. And in
Hmm.
also in the natural process, and this is with birds. If you walk out your door, or if you walk into an area of the forest, the more diversity there is in terms of birds and bird language, the healthier the forest is. But to make that
Yet those
happen,
birds aren't domesticated.
exactly, the more diversity, the less domestication, the
Hmm.
less,
Wow.
the less, the fewer boxes that we put ourselves in and those birds. And if you put a bird in a cage, that bird will live, but they're not alive.
They shut up.
Yeah. And so that level of domestication and I'm responding to your piece about responsibility distancing. Responsibility, I love that term, by the way. Whoever your friend is, please
Mike
thank
Wald,
Mike
my
Wald,
friend
my
Mike.
friend Mike. Yeah, thank Mike. Is that responsibility distancing comes from being domesticated to the point to where we lose who we are. And that domestication also creates that patriarchal thing that I think is really not so good in the world. It doesn't mean that men as men we can't lead. It just means it has to do with how we lead.
Well, it gets back to control and power, which I have a feeling is. I think control, power, trust are going to be thematic throughout our conversations.
Absolutely.
They're elemental things. This week, I just a little sidebar. This week, I we tried to make an analogy between science and business, and the science of innovation. Can innovation be a science? And so we just tested that thought and we said, well, science is about things at a molecular level, one part of science. Can we look at the elements of it? And what are the elements of innovation? It's teamwork, it's ideas, it's creativity, it's capital, it's all of these things, and which led us to look at the periodic table of the elements and said, okay, let's take those all away. And what is the periodic table of innovation? What does that look like? And so I'm feeling like the periodic table, the elemental pieces of this conversation, the molecules that make up the nation, are we're starting to discover those through our conversation, exploring into that trust, power, control, and the way you're helping us understand those better. Um, this notion of, and I can't unhear this sentence: the more diversity, the less domestication. Right? The more
And the healthier.
diversity.
The more diversity, the less domestication, and the healthier. Those, and
It's it.
more
Dewey, if you
diversity.
notice, it's always three with you. Boom, 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 which I love.
That's sort of true.
It's yeah, my reptilian brain. Well, and my pen because I can write things down and save them. Um, so let's go back to the root of the issue, um, because this is the things aren't as they seem, right? On the surface level, and how many of us really dig into the root of the issue. We're in an argument or there's a disagreement. I kind of think the root of the issue in a lot of stuff is a failure to communicate. That's a bias I have. I have a communication bias. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
how does how does someone understand? Let's throw a big word out there: causal chain analysis. How do they understand? What's the first question they should ask? I know. Oh, I said should. I'm trying to. I'm on a little behavior mod, getting rid of the word should. So every time I say it, I have to. I got to.
the
Boom.
first question we would encourage somebody to
Yeah.
ask. Um, the first question that I spend a lot of my life going, there's something more.
Hmm.
There's something more. What is it? There's something more. There's something deeper. One of the first questions that came to mind is to ask why. When we ask, which I think is a really good question, we need to be asking.
Always a good question.
The unfortunate part sometimes about asking why is that it puts us into our brain. It puts us in, yeah, that.
Yeah,
Someone
yeah, yeah.
says,
No, yeah. Instead of here, right? Instead of
right.
here,
If I say, hey, Mark, why did you wear that shirt? You go, instead
and I
of,
look up, right?
right. There's all that neuro linguistic
Yep,
programming.
yep.
The, and instead of, if I'm asking, I may even say, what was your process in picking your shirt this morning? What's behind that? Was that shirt a gift to you? Was the only one there? Which I'm guessing probably is not true, but what's behind that? And there's something more. What is it?
This idea of questioning and self-questioning and self-discovery is what we're at, which is that's the how do we understand the root? First, it's probably a good idea just to suggest that understanding the root of the issue it's typically is going to come from conflict. We're trying to resolve conflict. So, like, what's really going on here? What's she really saying? What's he really saying? What's driving this? What's the root of it? So it feels like there's got to be some stakes. And if there's some stakes, then I'm going to invest the time. And so we give them some tools. And I remember being taught this by a colleague in New York. We were at Baudelaire's in New York City, never forget it. And we ended up drawing, I'm the drawing guy, and we ended up drawing on the paper tablecloth, the whole thing. But he was suggesting, here's the thing, and working backwards one step at a time, which is where I got to my whole outcome engineering thing. Let's like start at the end and work back. I think was from that dinner 20 years ago. And what happens, I think, is that's not easy. And so we stop 2 links into the chain rather than continuing and saying, so okay, so stay with the shirt. So what's the deal with the shirt? No, and then they say something. They go, well, what it what does it feel like? What did it feel like to pick that shirt? Oh, and I get a little more, and then it's I think on the 6th or 7th link of the chain, we're at the root cause. At
Yeah.
least that's my experience. What do you think of that?
No, I totally agree with that. And what many of us do is, and I'm in agreement that we do, here's X and we go, oh, well, what's behind that? We go down one and then we go down another, but we don't go to the depths. And um, it's almost what it feels like we do is we go deep enough just to go, okay, now I'm okay. Now I don't have to worry. Instead of going, how am I going to challenge myself?
You've
Really,
responsibility distanced yourself from the answer.
exactly. To really go, what is this shirt about for me?
Hmm.
And or what is happening in my family? What is happening in my system? And because a lot of what we're dealing with the um, and Traver's post was just mind blowing. Actually, it might have been one of the best posts I've ever seen.
Wow.
Um, and I've actually told Traver that personally. But one of the pieces with this is, are you okay if I slightly shift this a little bit?
All right. Well, I'm going to yes and the fuck out of that.
All right. Much of what we deal with and what we're dealing with in in the not all men or is a systemic issue. And if we're working just with families, just with say our own individual families, it takes 3 generations in a family to change something.
Hmm.
So if my say grandfather was abusive to my parents, one of my parents will pass that on and be abusive to me. For that to change, I have to not be abusive to my children. And then my children have to not be abusive to their children. And their children will be, so there's me, my children, their children. Their children will be the first generation to be able to walk into a new
Hmm.
parenting relationship more or less clean from the abuse. Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense. And I've had a long conversation on my other show with a psychiatrist about a psychologist rather about the domestic violence that is a direct result of all being cooped up together with COVID,
You bet.
and how it's going to take, and it's funny, he said it will take generations for this to
Exactly.
go away.
So that's the one piece is it literally takes 3 generations to change something to the positive. And this is a big piece. It only takes 1 generation to the negative to instill it.
Right. So let me see, let just test that for a second. So in a home that was, let's say, we'll say, normal's the wrong word, but devoid of conflict. Yet the stressors of COVID for a year have been so harsh, and let's add financial pressure. Let's add all the other pressure. Um,
Mm.
And we've all felt it one way or another, or we're one ring away from that pressure.
Right.
And that in itself caused a lot of bad outcomes that wouldn't have happened. They were nascent, but happened.
Mhm.
That's that first generation of it. So now those kids, that's going to get passed on and passed on.
Correct. And that will take 3 generations to get that out of the system. Like, and that's a big deal. Like my parents, and particularly, well, both my parents were fairly abusive. I don't need to go into the whole story with that, but I want to. My sister is like one of my heroes in the world and one of my very best friends. Her and her husband raised 2 children who were, and they are absolutely non-abusive people. They are wonderfully lovely people. Their children now have children. So it's my niece, and then I guess it's my great nieces and nephews. My niece and
Right.
nephew, and then my great nieces and nephews. I think I have that right. Those little kids they're different than we were. The brightness of their eyes, their ability to express, their ability to love, the willingness to take risks and explore. It's different because, and this flips all the way back to some of that stuff we were talking about earlier, is that be that forced choice between attachment and authenticity that we talked about a couple of times
Yeah.
ago. With that, true attachment actually spurns authenticity. It actually helps create authenticity. It's a pseudo false attachment that stops the authenticity. And so my little great nieces and nephews are, I mean, they're just wonderful little beings. And it's like they've never had to hold back here that, oh, I might be hit, I might
Right.
be overly punished, I might be sexually messed with. They don't have to hold that, which opens them up. And so um, it takes time to heal, and it takes time to trust. About 3 generations.
So I want to use that as a springboard into this notion of the protector class. I honestly can say that there was no male figure in my life. I mean, there were male figures in my life that I looked up to, but there was none, not one of them suggested that my role was to protect those around me.
Mm.
I never heard that. And I feel pretty well adjusted, I'm not abusive, none of those things. Oh, I've had my moments for sure. But
Hmm.
this, now I can't unhear the protector class.
Right.
But what's interesting is I'm either what do we say, predator, or the opposite of that, right? The other side, when
Yeah.
that bit in our DNA, back to our molecular thing, you know, that complex strand that makes up who we are, you only have to have one bit that's off for it
Right.
to not work, right? And that the protector bit, we can call it that. The protector bit is either on
Protector,
or off.
so to
Yeah,
speak.
the gene. There you go. We got to figure out which one of those genes that one is, and let's go to work on that.
Yeah.
That's
That's
how
all
we fix it.
of my great great.
We'll GMO our way out of this.
Yeah. But go ahead with what you were saying.
Well, it as parents and as grandparents, I'm in the role of grandparent now, and I take that role probably more serious than I did as a parent, because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing as a parent. I mean, I worked at it, but I, didn't know. Now I know, and I get another shot. I get to be a grandparent. I will now go out of my way to make sure that all three of my boys understand what it means to be the protector, a protector, to be protective, to be,
Hmm.
um, to create a sense of a safe space. One's in high school, just started, one's in junior high, one is homeschooled. And so there is, it's an interesting conversation I'm looking forward to, because the two older boys, I can have adult conversations with them,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely have adult conversations with them,
Mm-hmm.
and bring up this idea of, but I think maybe the way in, because I think if you say the protector class, that's too nuanced, but how safe do you feel when you're with your friends?
Mm-hmm.
How safe do you think the girls feel when they're with the friends? How safe are you? And I mean, you could just kind of do a little safety survey, possibly. In fact, I'm going to do that. Um, it's a great little audit to do. How safe do you feel right now?
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
you mean, pops? I don't know. Feel safe? It's an easy question.
Yeah.
What are you doing to help people around you feel safe? That one's going to throw that. There's a curveball in that one, because I think as a 14-year-old, that concept, I mean, if I went my whole life and no one ever had that conversation with me, I can't not have that conversation with my grandkids. It's going
Right.
to be that time. They'll say 50 years from now, and Pop said to me, what are you doing
Yeah.
to create a sense of safety for those around you?
What do you want them to do? Your 14-year-old grandson, what do you want him to
I think that the first thing is to be aware of the idea of safety. I think that is the first thing, is just be aware of it. Hey, safety is a thing. The safety of relationships, safety of conversation, the safety of people around me, that I feel safe, that I can help others feel safe. Not how to do it or why to do it, or just like, safety is a thing. Put it on your radar. It's a little knob on your radar that you can adjust. And sometimes you need to make sure you're in a situation where, like, safety, my wife and I walking through, was it Nice or Marseille, France, at maybe 7:30 in the morning, did not feel safe. And it was like, I'm walking in front. We're both martial artists, and when we got to where there were some people, I said to her, I said, I didn't, and there weren't any people, and we just didn't feel safe. It wasn't like we were walking through a bad area. There was just energetically. And I said, what were you doing? She says, I was thinking of my back kick and how robust my back kick is. And I can protect us both, right? Um, so I think safety as a concept is something. I think it's just an intention. That's what it is. That's an intention.
do? I believe it exactly. I mean, I know when certain people walk into a room, whether the room gets safer
Yeah.
or less by their energy. I know that if you and I are walking anywhere together, what I want to know, I mean, this is an interesting piece because I've been thinking about this. I mean, you're 67, I'm 70. Probably two or three dudes that are 20 could probably take us ultimately. But what I want to know is that we would both fight for our lives with each other
Oh
and
yeah.
for each
Don't want to be in that fight, but if I was, somebody would get hurt. Probably not us.
other. Well, that hopefully, But the bottom line is what I want to know is you have my back.
Yeah. The image that came to me right then was we were literally velcroed to each other back to back,
That
right? And we became this immovable force. One of the five tenets of the martial life for me is indomitable spirit. And that is, all five are equally powerful, but that's the one that gets me all the time. And I would go into that situation believing you could not dominate me
exactly.
just because
And
you're punk kids, you know.
right. And if you did, I'll fucking die trying.
Yes.
Um, but the bottom line is that protector class, it's an energetic piece. It's the same way, and I know I keep at times going back to the horses. Horses want to know two things. Are they safe and where do they belong?
Mm.
We want to know that same thing.
Mm.
And you can see, I can see, when somebody walks up to a horse and the horse goes, I'm not safe now.
Mm-mm.
I see someone else walk up to a horse and go, yeah, I'm safe, I'm good. And we need to have that energy.
As you relate things to horses, I relate things to audiences.
Mm.
And the onus, that's maybe not the right word. The challenge for the speaker is to energetically have the audience know that they're safe,
Right.
that they feel safe, because as we said in an earlier show, you you need to get people to lower their shields, and they're not going to lower their shields unless they feel safe.
Exactly.
Right. And once the audience can lower their shield, then your idea, your message, your influence, the thing that you want to communicate to them is going to get through because they feel safe. So it's safety of one and safety of many. One of the things that Traver suggested is in your group of friends, your male friends, there's a guy, he called him Bob, which is hilarious because yeah, there's always a Bob, right? And uh, in Hollywood, we would say, Bob's Bob, which was a way of just, yeah, Bob's Bob. And, he's quirky, he's whatever. And that's a way of responsibility distancing ourselves, as opposed to, hey, Bob, you don't get to be in this. Bob's Bob bit is bullshit. And we're friends and I care about you. And we need to get at the root of what that is all about. You're going to be better than the people around you are better. Now the question here, doctor, is, can I flip Bob's bit? Can I, if the gene is missing, I can't. If it's just not been put into the on position, I can. Do you, in your experience, you have thousands, what did you say, 50,000 hours
Probably
therapy?
close to 70,000.
70, I'm off.
That,
Is it
50 or 70, it sort of doesn't matter.
after 12, it's like,
Right.
is it
After
a
the
missing
40 or 50, yeah.
is it a missing bit or a misset bit?
I think it's a misset bit.
Okay.
I believe that we do want to protect. We do want to step in. It's almost many people who don't step in don't trust themselves.
Back to trust.
Yeah. Like if I need to talk to Bob, I have to trust myself that I can handle Bob telling me to go fuck myself.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I have to trust myself that I can handle Bob punching me in the nose. I have to trust myself that Bob will tell me I'm full of shit. But here's what's interesting about this. At least if we talk to Bob and objectify Bob and tell Bob he's basically a piece of shit, and we don't really, and we try to control instead of coming in with the power piece, which, and for people who haven't watched some of the other shows, control is the thing we do when we don't trust, and power is the ability to influence and be influenced in contact and relationship. If we objectify Bob because he's objectifying somebody else, we're no better than he is.
Yeah.
And all of what you and I are talking about, what Traver's talking about, is that objectification process. The racism, the sexism, the misogyny, the ability to go in and kill somebody. We cannot do that if we're not objectifying somebody. And so the gene, perhaps, that needs to be turned on is a gene to help us stop objectifying the other.
That feels maybe even a little bit harder.
It's way harder. And it's the root cause. The root cause of racism is objectification.
I love how it takes us about 45 minutes to get to it.
Yeah.
And there you go.
The root
Objectification.
cause is objectification. We cannot, for instance, rape a woman if we're not objectifying her. If we are assaulting somebody, we have to objectify them to do that. We have to dehumanize who they are.
That's the word, right? Dehumanize, make them an object. We've taken the human out of them. They're just an object.
Yeah, they're a piece of ass. They're a slave. You name it.
They pulled all the life. I think of objects, and I'm just surrounded by objects here.
Yeah,
and there's no life in any of them. But
exactly.
The things that have life, there you go.
Yeah, that's that I, thou, we piece that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
So, and the power comes in the process of not objectifying Bob. We can talk to Bob in a way that's not objectifying him. We go up and go, hey, you're an asshole. Stop it. That's an objectification. We can go up to him and go, look, dude, I care about you. And something's happening here that needs to shift. And that's where the power comes in. I'm aware that we're going to run out of time here in a minute. May I shift us slightly?
Let's land the plane.
Yeah. I believe deeply that white men that we need to step up to the plate and begin working with this in a way that we have not done this before.
Yeah.
Whether it be racism, whether it be misogyny, regardless of what it is. And this goes back to not all men, not all white men are racist. But the truth is most of the people who are racist are white men. Not all white men are rapists. most of the people, most of the time, if there's rape, it's us. And we have, I believe, a very deep responsibility to step up to the plate and really start looking at this. And that's my encouragement and my request to the nation. It's like, how are we going to do this?
Well, it's one step at a time.
You
One
bet.
step at a time, right? And then commit to taking the second step. The most important step is the next step.
Yeah,
And us, we took a step, right? Traver took the first step. We took the next step. Now, those that are listening, and we appreciate the responses that we're getting from the men out there who are really taking these things to heart. Take a step, talk, have this conversation like we've just had with someone important in your life.
you bet.
And the I'll share this last piece. It's called Sodotu, Sodoto. Write that down, Sodoto, and it means see one, do one, teach one. And it's how doctors learn. I see them stitching a thumb in the OR or in the ER. Then they said, "Okay, Mark, you got the next one." They taught me. They teach. I do it. See one, do one, and now I'm going to teach Duey how to do the thumb. See one, do one, teach one. So we saw one. We saw Traver's heartfelt, as you said, best post ever. Do one. We just did this. We talked about it. Now I'm going to go and commit to going and talking to my oldest grandson about safety. So that's the teach one. And in that process, we learn. And behavior modification is one step at a time. We've talked about trust and building up the trust in yourself and your ability to go have challenging conversations is a trust thing with yourself. As you said, I trust that, hey, I can go talk to Bob. It's all the Bobs. I don't mean to pick on you,
Well,
but
my next
it's,
name's Robert, so
well, there you go. It's
who
it's
makes it?
that consistency over time equals results, like that one small step, and then trusting that you can have that conversation, and eventually it becomes integrated into who you are, and you're now safe, and you radiate, and you can teach others. Dewey, thank you so much. I just so dearly
Thank you,
appreciate
sir.
these conversations,
Yeah,
and
I leave each one of these more enriched.